Welcome to FitStory TV, the only platform that is focused on storytelling for fitness experts. Our mission with this podcast is to empower you to harness your vulnerability and lead with your story. If this is your first time listening, then make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss out when we drop more fire. Fucking love podcasting, bro. FitStory fam. Matthew Burbridge is back in the motherfucking house. And I want to kick off today's podcast with a little update. So before we kind of get into the guest, just thought I'd give you a little 60-second update. Things have been crazy good here with FitStory since being back in the coaching game. So that happened for me back like kind of end of December after nearly a year out. And although I did have somewhat of a productive 2020 in amongst the madness and the fucking craziness that everyone else was experiencing, it was as productive as it possibly could be. Now I look back and reflect, it could have been far less productive. Building that offline business, building Alchemy, and we're nearly ready to open again there. And, so that's going well, but there is nothing like being back here doing this jam. And as the old saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. I fucking believe that. I feel that. And, for me, I guess being back in the coaching game, it was one of those things that I always said I was going to do. I never said I was going to leave FitStory and never come back. I always did say, I'm going to leave the door open, but I need to go away and I need to recalibrate. I need to refocus and I need to come back. And I'm so glad I did. And I'm so glad I had that time off, because now I've come back. I'm working with some incredible clients. I'm doing this all on a one-to-one basis now. No more group coaching. Although I may be doing something in March, may or may not be. Leave that one for a moment. But the podcast is going really good. Things are getting better and better. Every single week we see more increases of downloads, which is like, I just really appreciate the fucking support. And the podcast mission as well, because I covered that on the last episode. And this podcast really does mean a lot to me, not in terms of what it's doing for business, but because I understand that people are really being helped by the stories that are shared. The guests that come on are phenomenal. They come on, they open up, they share with their heart on their sleeve, they become vulnerable, and that's more than I could ask. So I really appreciate every single one of the guests, as well as all of the listeners. And things are only going to continue to level up from here on out. So I do invite you to come along for the ride. With that said, away from the podcast, I've been hanging out again with somewhat 700 fit bros over in the FitStory community. If you want to come and get connected, then find me on social media. I will link the group in the show notes. I think that was probably 60 seconds. I think I did pretty fucking well there, Jimmy. I think I did pretty good, but we aren't here for me. We're not here for me to just give you endless updates. We're actually here for my guest today. And I remember connecting with this dude a while back, and I read bits and bobs of your story. Like I read a bit here and a bit there over the last like couple of years. We've been connected literally like 2 years, I think, on social media. Yeah, 100%. Always see your name popping up, and I'm sure you did mine as well. And I was always like, I got to get this guy on the podcast. And I'm glad you could join me today, bro. Because I think what this podcast does is it offers the listeners a roadmap. And this roadmap is your story, how you got to where you are today. So what you're doing now is helping gym owners create profitable businesses. And these are proven methods. And you've had to figure that shit out yourself. You've had to go through the mistakes. You've had to go through the lessons. You've had to go through the difficult times that business building brings. You've had to go through the mental shifts. You've had to go through go through all of the stuff that you had to go through to get where you are today. And that's why this podcast is so important, because when people listen to this, they're going to gain an insight into exactly what that took from you mentally, what that took from you emotionally, what that fucking took from you physically, because we all know building a business is a mental, physical, emotional, even a motherfucking spiritual game, right? And that's why I'm so excited for this, brother, because I really do believe that when you share your story, people will be given insights that will lead them to breakthroughs. And maybe not breakthroughs all the time, but certainly bomb diffusals. People will be able to say, hey, I don't want to go down that path. This guy's been there. I'm not going to make the same fucking mistakes because he is showing me how not to. And I do get messages like that. I mean, just before we went live on this podcast, we were talking about how cool podcasting is. Obviously, you can plug your own podcast on here too, but it's cool because you get these messages from people. And, you know, the most recent one I had was someone be like, yo, like, you would not believe, I cannot believe this. Like, I'm listening to this episode now and I've just realized what I need to do in my business. And I'm like, yes, what an amazing fucking feeling. And that's all because of a story that someone hears that resonates, that hits hard, and it offers perspective. It offers new outcomes, new possibilities for your life and your business. So I'm not going to go into it now. I'm sure you're going to give us some insights, Jimmy, into what it took you to get to where you are. But from what I kind of have gauged from reading some of your stuff, man, you nearly went bankrupt on your journey. You've been through some shit. And now you're sitting here with a podcast. You're sitting here with a successful business. You're hiring teams. And how the fuck did you do it? So what I really want to start this podcast off with is like the deep stuff. And I want to go back. Okay. I'm going to throw you in the deep end, right? And I want to go all the way back to when you were born. What did life look like for you, my brother? What was it like growing up? And how did it look?
Actually had a pretty tough childhood. So my mum committed suicide when I was 2, right? So when that kind of happened, like when I was like young, like I kind of just like remember. So when my mum passed away, I don't really remember that, but I actually like developed a list and didn't speak for 2 years after that. So pretty much, and not 100% correct on the years, but probably from when I was like kind of 2 to 4.5, I didn't speak. And then after that, I had a lisp, which I still kind of slightly have, but I had a pretty bad one for like about 5 or 6 years. So then, so my father developed a heroin addiction, essentially. So he was like an ex-user, then met my mom, was like clean for, I believe 5 or 6 years. I don't have an amazing relationship with him, but one of the really important things to me is I have improved that over the last 3 or 4 years, which has added a really amazing part to my life, which maybe we can talk about later. But then I kind of moved around from house to house because he was like a little bit erratic, obviously, with the addiction, and then had family look after me. And then when I was about 8 or 9, I moved in with my grandparents. So, which was one of the best things, to have a really like stable home and things like that, dinner the same time every night, and they loved and cared for me. So yeah, my childhood was like full of sport. I think you don't reflect on stuff when you're younger, right? As to why you do what you do. But like, I wasn't very studious. I was a nightmare at school. Actually left school in year 11, like got kicked out. Essentially, they're just like, you're not coming to school. So my life was like very filled up with like my friends were like everything, because they were at school, your friends kind of don't leave, right? So I'm very much hanging out with the boys, and then like plus playing sport every day. Like, Monday to Friday would play like a couple of different sports, and then kind of on weekends. Yeah. So it was actually a bit of as you say it, I've kind of like, you can see me get a bit uneasy. Like still to this day, it's like 30 years later, right? So yeah, that's kind of the.
I want to say first and foremost, I really fucking appreciate you sharing that. And when I said we're going right in, you went right in. And I know how hard it is to open up and to talk about things like that happen in our lives. Suicide is one of those things that, it's taboo. People don't talk about it. But, when I was growing up, if I can offer just some context on why that's important for me and why I think that it's something that we can kind of unpack a little bit, is because I grew up similar to you, very, very difficult upbringing. And, at one point when I was 10 years old, I walked in and saw my mum trying to cut herself on her wrist with a knitting needle. It was really hard for me to kind of, and you're right. At the time, you ain't thinking about that. Then you don't reflect and understand why. And that's something that I think you know, I was subject to seeing that before anyway, but not with my mum, but with my brother, the one who's in prison now for murder. He used to self-harm all the time. He would try and kill himself multiple times. He slit his own throat once, slit all down his arms. And I remember this one day, he sat with me. This is really fucked up. But he sat with me one day, and he'd come out the hospitals. I actually wrote a post about this on Facebook a while back. And he's sitting with me and he's like, hey, you know, little bro, if you ever want to, you ever want to do yourself in, and I mean, you proper do yourself in, you never cut this way on your wrist. You always cut down. And he would tell me things like that. But I don't think, and again, at the time, couldn't quite get my head around it. It's just like my brother, right? And I'm like, I don't know why he's telling me this, but over the years, I've been able to really reflect on why my mum did what she did, why my brother did what he did, why he continued to do what he did. And I guess my first question for you is, as we can kind of stay on this subject before we kind of move forward, is like, obviously you say it's still quite hard for you to talk about now, but you've had years to reflect, right? So how did you, because for you to be able to, what I'm trying to say is people normally stay in the pain, and they normally stay so fucking far into the pain that they cannot see a future for themselves, and they cannot build, they cannot grow, they cannot make anything new because they're stuck in this trauma and they're stuck in the pain. So I think that what you've managed to do, you should take a huge amount of credit for, and you should be very fucking proud of yourself in the same way that I feel very proud of myself for being able to break the chains and to be able to do what I do. So on reflection, like, how did you do, like, how have you done that, man?
Mate, I think like a lot of self-development, a lot of mindset stuff. So couldn't say like a combination, but kind of when I was kind of in, it's kind of funny, mate. When I was like 18, 19, I was like I used to say stuff like, people would be like, mate, my mum passed away. And like, I'm so sorry. And I'd literally say like, oh yeah, no, it's a good thing. Like, it happened when I was young, so I don't remember it. It doesn't affect me. That's what I would say, right? And then I didn't realize until I met my like wife and things like that, how much it was affecting me. Because what happened is, when my mum died, and then my dad became a drug addict, drug dealer, and then I moved away from my grandparents, I had this feeling that anyone who loved me would leave me at any moment, because I had this lot of people leaving my life super abruptly. So then I worked with like a mindset coach, because I started to see these like things with my wife, and I was like, I want to, marry this lady. Of like, there's a couple of things in our relationship, and I think it's a combination of, 2 or 3 different mindset coaches. I still work with a psychologist, so her name's Rach. I've seen her for the last 4 years, every fortnight. We kind of laugh because, I chat with her for like 45 minutes, and then for the last 15, she's like, all right, like, let's talk about your family or your mom or your dad. So to try and like really uncover a lot of those feelings, and it's helped me, reconnect with my like family a lot and things like that. But I'd just say it's like, I think it's just talking about it, it's like the really big thing. A lot of, especially with, suicide, it's like very taboo. So I didn't talk about it for 28 years of my life. Like my grandparents, my family, just, my auntie Yvonne would talk about it, but everyone else, it's just like, no, not talk about it. And I think just, talking about it and about the feelings with people kind of, help the healing process. And it's really hard to say this, to realize that not everything happens to you. It's kind of, you kind of happen for you. And to not kind of blame anyone, because I had a lot of blame. I was like, my mum left me, like, my dad left me. And it's like, look, they just had their own stuff in their life. And I think probably the biggest thing that's helped me ground a lot is realizing, firstly, that, everyone does love you. It's just that, sometimes people do dumb shit, right? And then also just forgiveness, right? To be like,
absolutely,
those like, feelings kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. When you said you had a lot of blame, who did you blame?
I think like I think a lot of the time I blame myself. So
the reason I asked that, by the way, is because I felt the same way, and it was nothing to do with me.
Like no one loved me. I'm not worthy. No one wants to stay around in my life and stuff like that. Especially your mum and dad. Like, I remember like probably my mum like really affected me. My dad, I was a bit more older and conscious, and for me to be like, he picked, a drug addiction and drug dealing over me. Because obviously you can't have a kid when you have that. I was like, he picked that over me. So then this feeling of worthlessness and things like that, because when you kind of think about it without having someone talk you through it perspective, you're just like, fuck, like, he picked that over me. Like, I mustn't be worth much. So I think it was a lot of forgiveness to myself. And then, also for, like, I used to have this thing where I either loved people or hated them. It was like literally black or white. Like, we were super tight and I'll do anything for you, or I just kind of wouldn't talk to people, right? And it was this very, like, kind of sad, kind of life, really. And then, I realized with my dad, because I hated my father, like hated him, refused to talk to him. And then once I started to kind of forgive him and look at it in a different perspective of like, wow, like, he just lost his wife who he loved forever. They just had a newborn. Dad, he made the wrong decisions and kind of, felt back into bad habits. But I never thought once about how he felt during those 15 years we didn't speak, or, how he felt, losing me as a son when I left because of his mistakes and stuff.
Which would have been there 100%. They would have been there every day. And I often sit there and think about the same thing, with my brother and stuff. And it's kind of like, I haven't spoken to him in fuck knows how many years now. I haven't sent a letter or anything. I stopped writing when I was younger, and I never really looked back at it. But you don't sit and think about it from their perspective at all. But when I did, and after I shared my story, really was when I really went deep into it. I understood that my brother didn't disown me because he didn't like me. He didn't disown his family by killing someone to do it. It was because he had experienced sexual abuse, and that was rife in my family. And he had been through a lot of stuff that he still had core wound, man. It was open and he was bleeding every day. You couldn't see it. And because of that, he'd made decisions, and those decisions led him to where he is. And I guess this is the real kicker, though. It led me to where I am too. And very much in the same way as those decisions led you to where you are now.
Yeah. And, it's kind of, I think it's all just come ahead in the last couple of years. And I didn't even realize it, like I was, living what I thought was a normal life. But kind of confronting, these things in my childhood and, relationships and things. I truly say I'm like the happiest I've ever been, and money has nothing to do with that. And business has nothing to do with it. It's just kind of what we do every day. And also I'm very happy in business, but, I always, my psychologist was telling me, like, there's a study when people die, and, money and what makes us happy. And it's like connection, right? It's like having conversations like this. Like, we're going to connect a lot. We'll be like pretty good mates after this, I'm sure. And then, just realizing on that and, focusing on, connection and family a lot, which I didn't during my, teens and 20s, for sure.
Because what I'm interested to know, and I think this is, I love to talk about this, because when you mentioned being involved in fitness and doing that from relatively young age after your nan and granddad took you in and stuff, who was it that put that in front of you? Or did you just find fitness, or was it how did you get into it? Because I believe still to this day that I owe everything that I have, every fucking thing that I have, I owe that to fitness, and I owe it to what that lifestyle gave me in return. And I'm just curious to see, how you kind of view what fitness did for you and how significant it was for you, but also how did it start? How did you get involved in it?
Yeah, mate, I got involved mainly through sport. So I played a lot of rugby league, a lot of cricket, mainly rugby league. Played kind of like low level representatives with the Manly Seagulls over here. So it was always obviously super fit doing that. And then like I wished I was going to make NRL when you're like 18, 19, right? I realized kind of pretty quickly that, the skill level wasn't there. And so then then like was obviously like super fit, training like every day with those guys. And then I just did a fitness course because I left school in year 11 because I just wasn't going to school. My head wasn't right. Like, it's kind of funny. I used to hate study and like I just couldn't do it, which is kind of funny because now like all I do is like really study, right? Then so my auntie and uncle who I live with in Sydney, so once I got a bit too active, I had to move up to Sydney with my auntie and uncle, and that was great. But they put me through like a fitness course. It was just one of those like $5,000 ones, went for 12 weeks. And then they actually got divorced. And then I moved down to Canberra and got a job in fitness, and started working there as a guy named Dave Nixon, who's a really cool mentor. He's a great dude. And then started to help people lose weight and really found myself. And I was like, I think helping people transform and reach their peak potential in whatever it is, whether it's fitness or, maybe in business or with mindset breakthroughs, it's honestly the most amazing feeling. And I got addicted to that feeling of just, okay, this person, wants to be a better mom and she wants to lose weight to be happier and whatever it might be. And that's how I kind of got hooked to it.
Especially when you've been through it yourself. That's where it does feel amazing. And that to me is one of the main reasons why I will always say that I made the right decision in not going through with my level 3 PT qualification, because I didn't like the fact that they were creating cookie cutter coaches, that none of these people had really gone through a transformation themselves. They were doing it because it just was something to do, or whatever it was. Like, these people were not as passionate as I was because they had never been through one of those transformations. And I didn't want to be associated with reps level 3 because I was like, nah, you motherfuckers are part of the problem, because you're breeding these personal trainers who they don't fucking care. They don't fucking care. Whereas I fucking care, and I care because I pulled myself from the ground. I fucking dusted myself off, and I used fitness as the anchor to push myself forward. So to me, fitness had such a massive impact in my life. Of course, it felt that way when I would teach or train someone else. I would be so fulfilled. And I think that's one of those things. It makes such an impact in your life that you decide, hey, this is something I could give to someone else.
And I think I kind of forgot about it as we were chatting, but like when I was like 14, 15, I was like, I think I weighed like 105 kilos. So I'm about 92 today. So imagine me like probably 10, 15 centimeters shorter. And, no fault of her own. I think my grandma just overloved me, man. Like, I was a hurt kid. So, I used to have, like, me and my friends laugh, like of an arvo, I used to come home and have rice bubbles and cream, like full cream as a snack and shit. So yeah, I was a big boy. And, I was like, honestly, when I was 12, 13, I didn't care that I was overweight. But then when I started to get interested in chicks, when I was like 15, I was like, I need to pull this in. And just kind of started running, like literally like 10, 15 Ks a day, and did fruit diets and all this different like random shit. And then eventually, like, one of my mates who was a bit older kind of taught me how to eat healthy and stuff. And obviously that helped with sport and things like that. But I realized like how just getting bullied, just not being confident. I remember when I moved to Sydney, because I lived in the country, and I moved to Sydney, and I remember like my mates we always used to go to the beach. Obviously I live like 200 meters from the beach, and like I would wear shirts in the surf and shit. They would obviously just take their shirts off, go for a swim, and I'd wear like rash vests and stuff. So I guess that kind of self-consciousness of being like, hey, like, I'm not even confident to go to the beach, and coupled with interesting girls and things like that, kind of helped me. I think I lost like 20 kilos in like maybe a little bit over a year.
Wow.
And it was just by like, it was mainly, I wasn't doing any weights. I was just kind of running and like eating more fruit and, not eating, lollies, and just like literally common sense stuff where if you look at it, is it healthy? If the answer is yes, eat it. If the answer is no, don't eat it. Like, it was kind of pretty basic stuff, but that really changed me as to definitely a much more confident, more outgoing person. Which you kind of forget. They kind of only picked it up when you kind of shared your bit. So yeah,
100%.
that's actually what got me hooked on fitness, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's not only that, is it? It's the internal stuff. It's what you learn from it and the mental game, you know, like having to train and going for these workouts and pushing yourself. They're all things that prep you mentally as well for what it is that you want to become and who you want to become later down the line. I've always said that there's two things that helped me become good in business. One of them was being a drug dealer, definitely, because I know it's controversial, but it's true.
Yeah.
I learned a whole ton about maths. I learned
Yeah.
I learned about customer retention. I learned about what it meant to
Wow.
serve a good product. Yeah, I fucking had that on lock. But then the other thing was fitness, you know, and going through a personal transformation, a weight loss or transformation, and actually stepping on stage. And those two things prepped me for being a better entrepreneur. They prepped me for being better in business. Is
Yeah.
that kind of the same thing it was for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I don't know, I kind of talk about, because a lot of people ask, because the gyms, I recently sold my gyms just to do consulting, and a lot of people are like, how did you do it? Like when they hear it's like I dropped out of school, like all the kind of stuff. And I think it's a combination of like team sports, definitely with fitness, like, you know, fitness, like when you're in a really fit routine, like everything just works better in life, right? Like it's
Absolutely.
not saying you have to drill yourself, but you know, if you're doing your 4 days of gym workouts and a couple of runs, whatever lights you up. And I think I've always naturally been incredibly like competitive, which kind of helps a lot in business as well. Like, you know, I wanted to be the busiest gym in the area and things like that. But 100% sport. And I think my biggest driver, mate, is like my kids won't have the same childhood I had. So I kind of talk about that a lot. And it's like this, because you can be competitive as you want, but I have this like super deep internal drive that like I'll be the dad that drops my kid off to school. I'll pick them up every day, right? I'll be their footy coach and things like that. And I'll be there to support them. And, you know, I want my wife to be, you know, available for them. And they have this really cool childhood, essentially the childhood I didn't have, and they have a lot of stability. And I just realized very quickly that I can control how much I earn. And if I'm in control of that and I'm in control of the hours that I work, no one can take it away from me. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, and I think that's kind of been the biggest thing, this just like underlying little outcome that I know why I come to work every day, you know, and I don't have
love
kids.
that, man.
Can't wait till I do, but I know exactly what my life will look like when I do, and
Yeah.
everything's just kind of leading up to that at the moment, right?
I fucking really love that. I guess the reason why I love that so much is because when I think about you know, like my story, when I think about something as dramatic as your story, what you've been through, like there was so many years, and I know it's probably the same for you, where you didn't understand why it had happened. Like, why did this happen? And you feel like a victim to it, and you don't quite understand, and you can't quite put the dots together. And it's just like, is, you know, is there something wrong with me? Is it like, am I supposed to blah, blah, blah? You start to create all these stories. But when you've just said what you just said, that is when you look back on reflection, that is when it makes fucking sense. The reason that you had to go through that stuff is so that you can be a better dad. When you do have children, that's the fucking reason. Like that for me gives what I've been through worth.
Yeah,
You
and
know what I'm saying? It like makes it worth it. Makes
yeah,
everything that we've been through worth it because we're able to take the lesson from it, man. Apply it.
yeah. And I kind of never would have picked that up. It was actually a mentor of mine, Jerome, because he used to ask me like years ago, he's like, will you ever have kids? It's just like 5 years ago. And I'd go, no, I'd never have kids because like I was scared that I wouldn't be a good father and that the same things would happen, right? And I
Absolutely.
was like,
Yep.
no, it's just me, like, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, like, he picked it early, and I didn't believe him at the time. He goes, you're on this world to be a great dad. He goes, that's what you're here to do. And when I was younger, I was like, oh yeah, no, Jerome, I said to my wife, like, Jerome said this, but I don't want to have kids. And then it was like, you know, once you deeply fall in love and then your, you know, kind of friends have kids and you're around, like my cousins had kids now, then I'm like, kind of looking at, because I called him a month ago, just when I was driving. I go, mate, what you said to me 4 years ago was true. You know, I had this, but I just hadn't pieced it together because I knew my drive was so that if I had kids, they had everything, but I was still internally saying I don't want kids. but that's what drove me. And it just kind of, I think took a couple of years to kind of piece together to, I guess it's probably a confidence thing. He's just like, when he said it, he's like, you always wanted kids, and like, that's what drove you, but you just weren't confident enough to say, I'm ready to be dad.
Absolutely. 100%. And it makes sense as to why you weren't confident, because of the experiences that you went through. And those experiences maybe made you feel like you wouldn't be worthy of it, or be able to deserve it even.
Yeah, and I was just scared to fuck it up. Like, I had a pretty like messed up childhood, and I, say this, we're all fighting our own demons and things. But and you can't blame anyone. But I was like, wow, like, for how much pain I was feeling, I was like, if this happened to my kid, I wouldn't want them to go through that, right? And I think I was just scared to, be the person and the father that you need to be, because, we all value stuff differently. But, definitely when, I think about it deeply, probably for me is like, being a parent is the most important thing in the world. Like, it doesn't matter about business, other stuff. Like, as soon as you're a parent, because of everything that I went through, is like, that becomes number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah.
And that's the thing, man. It gives your story like worth. I think so many people, I hear it all the fucking time, and people are like, well, my story is boring, or it's, it's this or it's that. And they don't see worth in their story. And I believe that you can only lead other people to see that there's worth in their story once they see that you see the same for yourself. And when you do that, people go, fucking hell, that person went through a lot of shit, and they've been to the depths of hell and back, but they're using their story to propel them forward. And that's what you're doing. You're using your story to propel you forward in business, in your personal, in your relationships, and even the future that you want to create, this future story that you want to create with kids. I think that's a fucking beautiful thing, man. It gives our stories worth when we look back at it.
Yeah. And I think everyone has their own story, with everyone's been through incredible hardships, because, stuff that, happens to us, like, really, really hurts, and I think, that's why I was like, I think it's, I probably don't share my story enough, right? Because, but I think sharing your story to your audience, like, I know in my business, I'm attracted to males come to my business who want to be better fathers and stuff. And I don't even have kids, right? So like, that doesn't even make sense. But I think it's just because they know how passionate I am about it, and they see me, working towards it and stuff. And it truly attracts, like, sharing your story and what you've been through, it attracts the right person to your business.
100%. Yeah. I'm glad that you said that. Yeah.
And it's like, especially, and I kind of realized it, where you don't have to, take on the wrong people and things like that. And you just work with, really, say in my business now at the moment, I'm so grateful. Everyone's like, super family orientated. They want to create more freedom within their life, so they're not working, 70, 80 hours. So they can spend time with their kids and, their wives or their girlfriends, and maybe even just find them, perfect partner. And that, and that only comes through sharing your story.
100%. I often say that it doesn't just attract. What your story does, and this is the gold. Like, you guys listening right now, Jimmy's just said, you should rewind it, just hit that bit where it says 15 seconds to go back. But it doesn't just attract. What it also does is it repels. It repels. So what Jimmy was saying, it's attracting these people, it's repelling at the same time. So you're no longer attracting people to you who you don't really feel like you want to work with, or that don't really resonate, that you don't really share the same values with. And those type of people, by the way, regardless of how much money they put in your bank, they will never make you feel like you have a successful business. You will never feel like you have a successful business if who you are working with, who you are serving, you feel misaligned to.
Yeah. Mate, I used to find the same with any business. Like, do you know those, PT clients, and it's just like pulling teeth, training and things. And, one of the things, like, I kind of realized, but you have to, like, I was a bit further in my journey where you can comfortably say no to people. Like, when you're starting out, it's kind of like, oh, fuck, I just need to work with this
Take them out.
It's so easy to say that when kind of, when you're established, now it's like, hey, you're not a good fit, head over to this guy. This guy or girl is definitely a better fit. And I think it's just really important for your happiness outside of work to make sure you work with the right people to, hopefully you're at a stage where however many clients you need in your business, whether it's, 10 to 300, that they all light you up every day and, make you love absolutely come to work and chatting with them and helping them. And, sharing your story really does help attract those right people and 100% repel the ones who are like, oh, I just don't really align with, Jimmy or Matt's story or whatever it is, right? And that's cool because they'll find someone who they do. And it will be a much better fit for their program.
I've got a question then. So because you say you haven't shared your story, you don't share it as much as what you probably should. Now, I agree. Of course, you're going to get that from me. The fucking storyteller. I'm going to tell you and anybody else listening, you should absolutely share your story more often. As a rule of thumb, share your story once a month. As a rule of thumb, as you build your audience and you bring new people into your pipeline, hey, you know what? Go out your way to put your story together. And it can be repurposed slightly and change, you can add different chapters, take certain chapters out. You can amplify certain details, reduce others. You can play around with it, manipulate it in terms of how it looks. But you should share your story more often. And again, rule of thumb once a month. So my question to you is, knowing that you probably don't share it as often as you should. The reason I'm asking this, by the way, is there's a lot of people listening that feel the same way, that know they should share it more, but they're just not. What is it that is it just awareness now you've got it, you will be, or what is there another reason as to why you're not sharing your story more consistently? Let's go there for a second.
Mate, to be honest, I've been writing down notes because you're giving me gold here. I think it's just awareness. Like, I'm a very structured person. Like, if you tell me to do something once a month, like I respect you, you're coming from authority, I'll just do it. But I think, I think it is awareness a little bit not to think about, because some of my best social media posts, it's really weird, is just when, I'm with my family on Christmas and I get kind of emotional and I do like a long form post about like my family and my life. And like, I've just written it in my phone with like grammar errors and like stuff like that. So it's probably a couple of things, and you did grounding before. So it's probably the first thing you have is awareness, but then it's being in the state to be vulnerable as well. It's kind of an emotional thing. Like, if I was kind of in my day to day, it's like, having the right environment to kind of be able to reflect on those things as well will probably be the next issue I encounter now that I'll be aware of it to, post it on the first week of every month or whatever. What do your guys struggle with once they're aware of it?
Yeah, a lot of people that I come across struggle with feeling like their story is relatable. So like, here's how I always quell that as well. So people get caught up in this thing where they're like, yeah, but no one's going to really relate to it. And they're thinking too much about the circumstances or the event, right? They're thinking about the logistics of their story. So for example, with yours, you went through this, suicide was involved, drug addiction was involved, this was involved, that was involved. So a lot of people put their focus into the logistics of their story and think that no one else can relate. Because, hey, how many people are there on the planet? How many people are reading my post? And how many of those have gone through the exact same fucking thing? Here's why it doesn't matter. It's not the logistics of your story that actually matter. It's the emotion that was felt. You know what rejection feels like, right? Because you felt for many years that you were rejected. It doesn't matter how you get there. As long as the emotion at the end of it is rejection, every motherfucker knows what rejection feels like. Someone's been rejected by a job. Someone's been rejected by their partner. Someone's been rejected by this. They've been rejected by a client. We all know what rejection feels like. In the same way we know what sadness feels like. In the same way we all know what happiness feels like. So it's actually the emotion that is felt that is important. And one of the main things that I've seen that people hold people back from sharing their story more often is they get inside their own fucking head and they think that, hey, it's not relatable. Well, your story isn't always going to be relatable. I struggled for years with that because I was like, when my mentor told me, Lewis Raymond Taylor is a great guy. he said to me, he was like, dude, you need to share it. I was like, Lewis, it's not going to be relatable. People aren't going to. And ultimately, I was saying that, thinking that it wasn't going to be, because how many other people's brothers had murdered someone, and how many other. So I was thinking again in the same way that a lot of people are now who are struggling to share their story. The other thing that holds a lot of people back, because that can often be the surface level objection, right? The whole relatable thing is often a surface level objection to why people can't really share their story or don't want to share their story. The real reason is a fear, some type of base level fear. They're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of being shamed. They're afraid of feeling guilt again. They're afraid of all these things. It's the fear that is beneath the objection. So if the objection comes out from someone, one of my clients or someone that I know that says, hey, I don't know how to put the copy together. Well, bull fucking shit, because you can always learn new copy skills. Just pick up a book and you can get better at copy. That's not the reason. So we dig a bit deeper. And over time, what we actually establish is that a lot of people aren't sharing it because they're afraid of some type of fear, rejection, feeling like they're going to be shamed, or people are going to, hate them, or whatever it is that is tied into that. So we all are aware that our stories most of the time involve shame, guilt, judgment. All of those things are actually the real base levels as to why people are not actually sharing. The surface level stuff, relatability, the copy's not good enough, it's boring. These are things that I hear all the fucking time. Here's a way that I will help anybody right now that is struggling with the fear that is holding them back from sharing their story. Let me ask you this. If you knew that somebody else out there was in pain in the same way that once upon a time you were in pain, that you felt, and you felt sad, and you felt upset, and you felt angry and frustrated, and you fucking hated feeling that way. If you knew that you could help that person, you could shift that emotion from that person, and you could help that person transpire and remove that feeling and start taking steps toward healing themselves through hearing your fucking story, would you do it?
100%.
Because if the answer is yes, then you need to overcome whatever that little fear is, and you just need to fucking share it. If you're not ready to do that, or you don't know how to do it, or whatever, there's always people that there's books you can read, there's people that you can get involved with, myself, my community, there's a solution. Yep. But if you're sitting there and you're not sharing because you're afraid of this or afraid of that, look, is it more important? Is holding your story back and staying there and holding on to that more important than actually helping someone with it? And this ties me back into what we were saying a minute ago. You help one person with your story, and all of a sudden you see your story has worth. When you see your story actually has worth, and it's actually not for nothing, that you didn't just go through all that shit for fucking nothing, that can make you feel good.
I think as well, I find, sharing my story, because I've been on social for many years now. So, probably not as consistently as you would like, but I kind of have in parts, definitely sometimes in my life more than others, but it creates deeper connections with people as well. They'll read it and, you'll reach out and, I know you're talking about when we we're kind of prepping for this show, is like cold DMing people's a nightmare, right? But you do a post and, even though you're not chatting with people, you can have these really deep conversations in social media because you've really, touched maybe a nerve for them, or you touch like a, part of their life in a really positive way. And I think that's one of the benefits. You can become incredibly connected very quickly with people, whether they read it or whether they chat to you or whatever. They'll say, hey, I saw this, and, they know a lot about you. I think it's one of the benefits, like even doing podcasts like this, right? If someone, has ever chats to us in the future, they'll know a fair bit about us, right? And you automatically, increase that connection just by, sharing your story on whatever platform it is. I think it's incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. And also that your story, when we share our story, and we give permission for others to do the same thing. And the reason why I really like saying that is because that's what it does. The amount of times that I have shared my story and I have had completely unsolicited DMs from people, And this is someone that I didn't even really know. And all of a sudden, they have spilt out a long ass message in my DMs telling me that I've never shared this with anyone before, but I fucking read your post and that I feel like I need to let go of this. Man, that is so powerful. It's what's kept me doing this shit for the time period that I have, and what will continue to keep me focused on this mission, because me being able to overcome what it was that was holding me back from sharing, which was keeping me, by the way, in destructive patterns, destructive behaviors, keeping me fucking playing small in my life, right? When I was able to overcome that, not only did that help me go through self-healing, and I was able to play a bit bigger now and be able to speak and talk, communicate my message to the world, but it also meant that I was able to help other people share their fucking story. So when we share our story, it gives permission for others to do the same thing. And it's so true. What that creates is this really deep emotional connection between people, really deep emotional connection. And that's why I say you're dead right, bro. Like, I don't think that, I don't like the fact that people think business needs to be done a certain way. Like, I don't like the fact that online trainers come to me and they're like, fucking, I am fed up and I am burnt out sending 20 messages a day on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. It is burning me out, and I'm going to end up in a place where I don't even want to coach, because for me to actually do what I love, which is coaching and getting people transformations, I can't fucking do without feeling like I hate the business I do.
Yeah.
But when they come to me and I teach them, hey, here's a way that you can just not do that anymore and actually have people that are ready to buy to reach out to you. And we do this through storytelling. And it's because, like Jimmy said, people feel emotionally connected to you. They resonate with it and they just connect.
Yeah. And it's I follow you said you had Brian Mark on.
Yes, B Mark.
Yeah, he's an amazing dude. But I just love his concepts of only engaging someone that engages in you, right? So it's like, and I'm sure, like, and I'll be honest, I've done cold DMs before. Like, you know, when people add, we just have a message, which is like, hope you get some value from my post, and that's it. And I think it's, you know, the cold DMs, it's just a crazy life to live, just sending like hundreds of those a day. That some courses teach you how to do. Like, I know there's I won't mention it, but there's a course where it's like, hey, like, go to hashtags and just, you know, have a look at someone's photo and just, you know, message them and stuff. And it might work, right? Granted, everything, the more people you reach, the more sales you close sometimes.
Absolutely.
But,
yeah.
You know, doing that every day just beats you down. It's just like, it's just a good way to, you know, run a business, essentially. Not an enjoyable way, that's for sure. And we were talking before about Clubhouse and YouTube and Instagram. It's like so many ways to find clients, right? By sharing your story and connecting with people. And, you know, cold DMs probably isn't the most enjoyable one, that's for sure.
Exactly. So like, it does work. And you know, like you were saying, it's a numbers game at the end of the day. If you send out 20 messages a day, and you know, you actually have a good script as well, because that's the other thing. If the script is, the framework is shit, it doesn't matter how many people you reach out to, probably won't work. But it does work. But what concerns me, especially now, is that there has been an influx of online trainers since 2020, because gyms have been shut in, which I'm sure we can talk about as well in a bit. But because of that, more and more people have transitioned online, and more people are now sending those messages, and more of the consumers, the person at the end of that process, are seeing those messages. And it's not a good way to do things, because if you think that when you're reaching out to these people that they are not savvy about what's going on, you've got another fucking thing coming. Yeah. We've got to start giving people more credit, you know, the average person more credit, because they are being pitched all the fucking time by people just like you, using the same fucking scripts. And, you know, if you do enjoy it, which I can't imagine that anyone actually really does, to be honest, sending out a ton of cold DMs, there is a certain point where you can no longer do it, because you do become burnt out. And the amount of people that I've spoken to that are doing 10K a month, but they are just at the limit now. And to make that 10K per month, they're doing things that just don't make them feel good. So I always challenge people, you know, what is the quickest way? If you want to get 10K per month, you know, what's the quickest way to do that? Well, it doesn't have to be that you need 10 clients at $1,000 each. You can just charge more for your fucking services. and you can have a lot less clients. And to be honest, when you do that, you're going to get better clients, and they're going to be more invested, and they're going to give better testimonials, and they're going to get better fucking results. So what I do is I challenge that entire narrative. Business doesn't have to be done that way. You don't have to do that. You don't have to show up every day on social media. Granted, there's going to be days where you don't want to show up every day on social media. There's going to be days where you just would rather not fucking do an Instagram story. There's going to be days where you're not going to want to be creative. You just can't do it. So the fact that so many people are following these frameworks of business and how business should be built, but I don't think that works for everyone. And, I can definitely put my hands up and say that I did, I went through the process myself of doing cold DMs, but I'm so glad that I stopped, because if I'd continued, I probably would have ended up not wanting to go to do build my business. I'd have been like, this is fucking driving me insane. So, mate, I'm glad we had that conversation. I think it offers people, again, perspective.
And the market's so aware. We're talking, before we jumped on, just about spending less time on Facebook. And, for, full transparency, I have like a VA team who help me on all my socials, right? But one of the reasons I was like, look, I don't want to be on socials as much is because all that happens is I get advertised to. Like, it's literally, every third post is an ad. And then, there's people, trying to meet up with you for coffee to sell you MLM and, online trainers. And it's just absolutely, hectic at the moment. So, everyone is just like getting pitched in their private messages now, because there's thousands of courses that are teaching it for every different service across the world. And, I think like the general rule is like, engage in someone who engages with you, right? Makes everything so much easier. And, granted, you can give it a try if you want, but it gets depressing after ages, just cold messaging people. It's a messed up way to spend an hour. I absolutely fucking
Yeah, and systems change over time. Systems have to be improved because the old way doesn't work anymore. And we've seen this happen because a few years ago, you used to be able to do a front double bicep, write down in the caption, hey, if you online coaching, contact me now. And that actually used to work back in the day. People would get clients from that shit. But it doesn't work now. So these systems have to constantly be like reframed, and we have to figure out a new system, improve it here, there. Storytelling doesn't. Storytelling is universal. It's always been and always will be. It drives the forefront of any good marketing campaign as well. Any big brand that you see, they have mastered how to tell their fucking story, and because of that, they are dominating. So systems do change. They have to be improved. We have to alter them sometimes, but storytelling never will. And it's also something innate. Every single person is a storyteller. You are a storyteller. You are a master storyteller, bro. You've been telling stories your whole fucking life.
Thank you. I need to get better.
Forget that.
Coaching with you, bro. A couple of months,
bro. Anything FitStory can do to support, because your message is fucking powerful and it needs to be fucking heard. People need to hear your story. So I'm glad that we shared space, bro. I want to just dive back because I know we ain't got an awful lot of time on this podcast. Even if we have to do this again, like I'm super down for that, by the way. But I want to go back a few steps. And what I really want you to kind of unpack is this moment where you've gone through a transformation yourself. You've seen the effects and the significance that fitness could have in your life and how that moved you forward. At which point then did you decide that you were going to do that for other people? And then how the fuck do you go from doing that to owning a gym?
Yeah, mate. So I guess it was kind of all like, I didn't plan on being a trainer, to be honest. Like, I did the fitness course because I kind of had nothing else to go on, because I thought I was going to be this professional athlete. And I used to tell my clients, like, when I was a couple of years into being a trainer, they're like, how'd you get into fitness? You just love your job so much. And literally, like, I think now we're talking, I had a lot of unlucky things happen to my life, right? Doing that fitness course and, teaching people to get health fitter and stronger I found what I absolutely loved on the first day of work, right? And who can say that, right? It's just like, was just like so lucky on that. So I kind of fell into it. I did a couple of jobs before, but just absolutely loved it from day one. And then I was a trainer. I was just cranking the hours, kind of like, probably about 35 to 38 hours of one-on-one PT a week. And then it kind of just came, you get to this threshold in owning a fitness business, right? Where it was like, you know, I didn't want to be a career trainer where I was getting up at like 5 a.m. every day and, you know, not earning the money I thought I deserved at that time. And so I just bought my mentor out of his business. He just had like his third kid, I think. So I was like, really, again, like my business life has been just kind of sometimes good luck after good luck. Like, so very good timing. He sold me that for like $20,000 as a fucking steal.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of a business owner then, because I've always been like, he had his way of doing things, and he was an amazing mentor. His name's Mark. Still talk to him to this day. But, you know, being a young buck, I was like 23, 24. I had my way at this time. I was, you know, doing so many courses. Like I was really big on Charles Poliquin and stuff back in the day. I actually did that. And then, so that's how I kind of got into business. And, you know, it was turbulent, you know, a couple of years for sure. But, you know, we kind of finally figured it out, which was lucky.
So you've now owned gyms, you've sold gyms, and what you're doing right now is helping other people get profitable with building their fitness businesses, right? In terms of their gyms. Like let's unpack that a little bit. And what if you could offer something in your story? So from going back through your journey of owning gyms and making mistakes and going through that process of winning eventually, what lesson could you offer, or what tip could you give? What could you offer to somebody listening who may be looking at owning a gym, or if they already are a gym owner? We have a variation of people, by the way, that do listen to this, from athletes to wellness coaches, fitness coaches, online fitness business owners, all sorts. So I think that would be really helpful.
Mate, I think probably like to digress just a little bit on the business side. Like I sold my business. I was business partners with my best mate, and we kind of have different life goals now. Like he's married with his wife, I'm married with my wife, and stuff like that. So like if going into any business, like that business partnership ended really well. But if you do go into business partnership with anyone, make sure you're in values alignment, and just know, right, going to friends and family, people say it's bad. I don't think it's necessarily bad, but just know that your values are going to change over time, over, you know, a 5-year period, and that's okay, right? And don't get caught up in kind of anything on that. And I think on the business side, like, firstly, you've got to learn how to market and sell, right? So, you know, being a good technician is like a no-brainer. Like if you want to, you know, be a builder, you're going to know how to build a house, right? But then it comes down to, you know, to marketing and selling, to growing like a thriving business. And, you know, some of the best advice I ever got at the start was make an offer so good that people feel stupid to say no, right? So
I love that.
And it makes sales easy, right? Where, you know, literally like they feel like, fuck, like if I don't do this, I'm going to miss out. So we just made a basic package. It was a 28-day challenge. We named it heaps of different things over the years, and then, you know, sold that into a, you know, 24-week program. That was our ongoing, and it still works to this day if you had a gym. And then, you know, I was lucky. My business partner was very, very good at sales. So he looked after all the sales side of things, you know, signing the trials, doing all the follow-ups and that stuff. And then we just learned how to, you know, essentially market better than the competition. And, you know, one of the things I'll say is like, you know, when you start, you'll do like, you know, your organic stuff, your storytelling, you'll get a lot of people from your network and Facebook ads and then referrals for sure. That's like your big three. But to build a thriving business now, you need to rely on 5 or 6 or sometimes even 7 lead generation flows, because the marketing landscape is changing so quickly that, you know, I said I was lucky. So we grew our clubs from like 60 members to 500 in like 6 or 7 months with Facebook ads, when they used to like pop off like $2 leads and stuff. Our second club opened with 280 members on day one, right? You can't do that in this day and age with the way marketing's changing. So you have to become an all-rounder or have a really good team around you to support you. You know, a lot of our guys will hire for their marketing. Trainers hate marketing, right? They just generally don't like it, right? A lot of them are gym owners. So we hire like VAs in the Philippines to help them out with, you know, just running their Facebook ads for them and, you know, doing their posting on time and like things like that, and email marketing. But yeah, that would probably be my biggest tips. Create a fucking kick-ass offer to start. learn how to market it to the masses, and then create a sales system where they do their trial, then they sign up to an ongoing membership. And a lot of our best guys, we have a system called goals-based selling, right? Where, Matt, you came in for me today for a 28-day challenge, right? Is we sell based on your goal, not based on the offer, right? And I think, as fitness professionals, we owe it to be honest to people, so say if you wanted to lose 20 kilos, for example, you're super fit. So it's just an example. It's like, hey man, that's going to take us 40 weeks to hit, right? And then we've got to keep it off for another 12. We're going to overcome Christmas then. Average Aussie puts on 2 kilos in Christmas. So really, mate, this is probably going to take 60 weeks to get there. But once you get there, you've lost the 20 and you've kept it off for 15 weeks and you've overcome Christmas. This is the package you actually need, right? And a lot of our best guys is, we'll teach that. We teach it easy at the start, but I think that's just like selling with honesty and transparency, right? And just going, hey, I know you opted in for the 28-day or the 7-day trial, but this is what you actually need. And do you want to solve this problem forever, or do you just want to do a 7-day free pass and dip your toe in? But right now you need to dump off the boat and go fucking in the deep end right here, because we've got 20 kilos to lose. So that would be the end goal, with people just using that goals-based selling system. And it's just honestly, like I say it's got a cool name. It's like, just be honest with people about how long it's going to take to hit their goal. That's what it is.
And they appreciate that. Right. They appreciate that when you're honest with them. Right. It's not like you fucking, because you do. I guess there's a fine line, isn't there, between doing what's really right for the customer or the client versus, the desire to want to get sales within your business.
Yeah. Well, I think even in goals-based selling, right, if the person doesn't, want to, commit to a 60-week program or whatever, that's totally cool. But you've started off that relationship with honesty, right? So whether they go back and they just do the 28-day trial, who cares? At least you've been honest with them at the start, right? And they've got really realistic expectations. They know the high points, they know the low points, and they know what it's going to take. So, I think any good relationship, think about if anyone here is married, right? You don't start off a really good relationship with your wife or your husband or your partner lying through your teeth, right? And be like, hey, you're going to lose 8 kilos in 28 days. So it's like, just be honest with them about what it's going to take. And, a lot of people will love that honesty, because it's, the bullshit marketing in the fitness industry. And that kind of encompasses it. Like, if you can learn that goals-based selling, you'll obviously, like when we're talking about numbers in business, it'll increase your customer lifetime value and your average spend and things like that. Increases your package lengths, and people automatically they have the right expectations of how long it's going to take on day one, which that's what our best clients do. Our guys doing, really high 6 figures or 7 figures. A couple of guys do a couple of mil. They've really mastered that process, and just it's like sell with honesty on what it's going to take for them to get their goal, and sell them what they actually need. It doesn't matter if they opted in for a 7-day trial or, a 28-day challenge. Just be honest with them and give them what they actually need to get the result.
I really fucking love that, bro. I know we've got to kind of keep it to a fine timeline today, which is a shame, because I feel like we could unpack so much more. And hopefully, bro, I would really like the opportunity to connect with you and continue to connect with you over time as well, man, because I really appreciate you coming here today, or just to be here, but also to share. And I know how hard that was for you to verbalize that, because I know that when you've gone through things like that, it sometimes when we open up that can, it ain't even just the time where it's difficult to do it, where we speak about it, but also for a couple of days later, like you've spoken about it again. So I know from experience, but I also know from having guests on the show, it's hard to do. And, I want to say I appreciate you for doing that. And I'm sure that the listeners do too. Bro, yeah, thank you. If people want to come connect with you, man, how do they? Sorry, my friend.
I had tears in my eyes for a little bit there. It's getting a bit trying to go back so no one saw. But mate, thank you. And I guess probably where to find me is I have a group called Gym Growth with Jimi Pomponio, and also a podcast called Gym Growth as well. It's like it's very tactical based if you want to learn how to get a shit ton of leads and close heaps of sales. And that's a place
who doesn't?
they're like 10 to 20 minute podcasts. I like to keep them short and sweet because it's highly tactical, and often you have to rewatch them, like re-listen to them 3 times, and you can watch them on YouTube. Sometimes we do screen shares. And mate, I'll get you on my podcast for sure, kind of chatting about that. And I'd love to be on here. I had an absolute blast. And I'm glad we figured out the time, right? Because last week my internet was down.
That's right.
And,
yeah. I'm almost certain we did try as well to book a while back, and it didn't come to fruition, right? So it's not only, it's like 2, 3. I'm a great believer in things happen, and they happen when they're meant to.
Last year was a nightmare for me. Like selling my businesses, like it all ended well and stuff, but just think about the biggest breakup with your missus ever, right? Like there was 3 business partners and 4 companies and like a couple of $1 million, and it was just like in revenue and COVID and shit like that. So last year I was just holding on.
That is part. That's
itself.
That's part 2. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, dude. Like that is part fucking 2. Mate, we will 100% do this again, Jimmy. I fucking appreciate you, man. Thank you for sharing space with me today. FitStory fam, we are out.